Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Tuesday's edition. We're broadcasting from Delray Beach, Florida, and from the great state of Connecticut with the control booth in Irvine, California. Joe Visconti, welcome back to the show. Happy to have you with me today.
Thanks for having me again. Boy, you guys are really getting upscale here now, huh? Wow.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes, we are. So, Joe, talk to our audience about the Israeli offensive. They've split Gaza City in two. Talk about the implications from that.
Sure. You know, it's kind of funny. I don't have a military background, but I was really thinking about what they did in Germany when they split it in two, Russia and America, and how that the problems with it, but at the same time, the genius of it. And so cutting in half, I talked about that when it first occurred. They should probably separate, and it's really ingenious. It's smart, and they've really done a great job of not having as many civilian casualties as you would think, with bombs going off everywhere. And it's smart to move them south. And I guess the next move will be how does Israel and the other nations decide to bring those refugees in an exodus? And but the first thing is taking out the terrorists, and that's what they are. They're not combatants, and they're doing a hell of a job. I think when we do see the reports later on about just what they've done and who they've targeted, probably have had a hit list on these Hamas terrorists for years, and they're implementing it. And I'm glad that they haven't taken the American Biden administration stop and wait approach.
Oh, God. Absolutely. I mean, it's really funny. Biden, Blinken, they're pushing for this, quote, humanitarian, temporary halt. Israel has said, they may have a little window to get humanitarian aid in, but Netanyahu came out and said, there is going to be no ceasefire, folks, nor there should be. I mean, 1,400 Israelis were murdered. It was done by Hamas. They started this. The Israelis will finish it on their time frame. And yeah, it'd be one thing if they had a humanitarian, quote, short little pause, as Netanyahu called it, to allow humanitarian aid into the south. But look, everyone in the north was warned. Leaflets were dropped. You are in a war zone. Get out of the war zone. The Israelis are systematically rooting out these terrorists. They're killing them. They're killing their infrastructure. Again, we don't know what the death toll is on the Israeli side. It hasn't been released. We are hearing multiple reports of Hamas leaders being killed. But again, these people, Joe, to them, death is martyrdom. So you're fighting up against an enemy. On the Israeli side, they value life. On the Hamas side, they value death. So by definition, if that's your terms of engagement, you have no choice but to completely wipe them out. And again, he has warned the citizens and the world, this is not a day operation, a week or 2 weeks. This may take months. And my belief is the Israelis will systematically execute their plan, and they will root out Hamas.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, Seth Rosenblatt, his brother's son, his nephew, was on a WhatsApp video call, all of us about 3 days ago. And he was there on the first day this occurred. He's a soldier, American citizen, but he lives there. And he gave us an hour and a half explanation of what's going on in real time. Well, nothing that was top secret or confidential, of course, but just what they were encountering and the butchery and what it looked like and how their stomachs have turned when they found what they discovered, and how there is a restraint. There is a restraint to some point from the government, the Israeli government, to the soldiers, and they're doing all they can do to be humanitarian. But the atrocities are they haven't really been shown yet, and we don't see them, almost like we never saw what happened in Nazi Germany. But it was horrific, and the problem is, he said, the people voted for this, and so the Israeli soldiers know that their lives are threatened. They really feel that if they don't do this, they're going to be exterminated as a nation, as a people. That's what the soldiers feel right now. They are apprehensive with Biden. That's what he was telling us. They don't know if they're going to get caught, like in Vietnam, where all of a sudden their government makes them stop and lose. So there's a lot of apprehension because Biden is president, controlling the U.S. military and everything else that he brings in. So I spent over an hour, listening to this Israeli soldier from a WhatsApp meeting with all of his relatives here in West Hartford, Connecticut, which is the most Jewish town of 169 towns in Connecticut. And so there's a lot of anxiety in the people that are, I'm not going to talk Republican or Democrat, people that are Jewish, people that have family over there. They're fearing for their life, and they don't feel safe that Biden and Blinken and the rest of them are trying to impose their Hamas agenda, basically, so Hamas survival agenda on the soldiers.
Joe, what do you make about the fact that Rear Admiral John Kirby, who is a stand-up guy, he's been a good spokesperson for the Biden administration. You know, he was asked earlier today, I can't remember what show, but he was on one of the morning shows. There have been 28 attacks on U.S. military personnel at bases around the Middle East. There has been no response by the U.S. And Kirby said, we reserve the right to respond at our own time and choosing. Joe, it almost seems to me like it's like incoming and there's no outcoming. I mean, I guarantee you, if Donald Trump was president of the United States right now, our servicemen would not be being attacked because Trump put the fear of God in people that, okay, you may want to meet your maker. You'll have a better opportunity with Trump as president than you would, you know, with just weak Joe Biden as president. What do you make of our non-response, Joe?
This is a problem. Russia fired off a test missile, nuclear missile out of their submarine. This is not, because there's such, at the same time, I would cry Biden family and also addiction with people. They've surrounded themselves to be chiselers and grifters and incompetence. So you've got criminal activity that's kind of washed over and getting investigated on top of everything else that's incompetence. So guess what? This is a recipe for disaster. And I don't know, who is really holding our country safe in their hands right now. You mentioned the general, but this is a dangerous time because we have administration. I'm sorry. I'm not talking as a Republican or conservative. As an American,
well, I mean, Joe, what's it going to take? Is it going to take U.S. service members being killed for the Biden administration to respond? Kirby at least acknowledged it was Iran backed, terrorist groups that are doing this. But again, if you don't deal with Iran, this stuff is going to continue.
What they need to do is bring, and this is, of course, is a Pollyanna, but they should have and should be able to, but they can't bring the UN to Egypt, into the southern area, and start that process. If they wanted a ceasefire, they don't need one. They could move that, and if they could never do it because that whole organization is totally corrupt, and the UN didn't even want to call Hamas. They voted against 2/3 majority to say it was a terrorist act, a genocide, etc. And so they're useless, but that could have been something. So you're seeing all these tools, organizations that have been set up for all these circumstances, and they can't be utilized right now. So that real better question is, what is America funding all these organizations, the UN, the Red Cross, if you're not going to implement humanitarian where it's needed so that you can continue to root out? And so they don't know what to do. All they know is they're losing support for the 2024 election. They're trying to run a war, World War III, on a political agenda to win. Okay, right. That's the problem we have right now with the Biden administration. They're sinking at every poll, and not just polls. Everyone's apprehensive. And
well, that's you give me a perfect prelude into our next segment. I mean, there's a growing chorus, Joe, of Democrats, and you and I have talked about this for months. But now a growing chorus of Democrats who are basically saying Biden needs to withdraw from this race. They're not stupid. They see the poll numbers. And again, polls this far out can change. We know it can change. But when they start citing polls saying Barack Obama should have dropped out, that's nonsensical, that he should pave the way for Hillary Clinton. They're in denial. Everybody knows Joe Biden's going down. He is not an effective leader. And when I see people on the Morning Schmo and on all these other networks in a full-blown panic, I mean, there is no other way to sugarcoat it. And they're saying, well, he could turn it around. It's Trump. Once it's one-on-one, where it's Biden versus Trump, the problem is it's not going to be one-on-one. There are going to be multiple candidates in this race. I saw polling the other day that Kennedy is polling around 20%, and he's pulling it about equal from independents, Biden, and from Trump. Cornel West is pulling 4%. We're seeing not only African-American support falling, but traditional Jewish support falling. I mean, if you're a Jew, how in your right mind could you support the Democrats based on these policies? It's not only that. Hispanic support is falling. Asian support is falling. I mean, everybody saw the old news. I mean, multiple, not just that one New York Times Siena poll, multiple polls, CBS poll, they run a very good polling organization, are showing Trump winning 5, 6 of the 7 swing states. Look, folks, we told you this election, there's about 9 total swing states. I've got news for you. If Donald Trump wins 5 of them, he's being elected our next president. And the media is totally freaking out about this. So, Joe, media's in full meltdown. What do you make about the polls and what the Democrats are going to do here?
Well, the New York Times poll was clear as hell. 5 out of, I think, 6 of the swing states, and we know which ones they are. You and I have been talking about this, and I'm sure your other hosts on your show for the last 6 or 8 months. And I've been saying it from the beginning, and it's been published in the Hartford Courant recently that Newsom getting in, and I think you're going to see Biden around Thanksgiving make a State of the Union address or some kind of Thanksgiving address and declare that he needs to concentrate on the war and everything that's going on, blah, 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 blah. And for that reason, like Lyndon Johnson, he's not going to seek re-election. I think that's coming before or right after Thanksgiving, but definitely way before Christmas. They have to reorganize the states with the primaries and everything else. And if Newsom did get in, don't think that 2 or 3 others won't just jump in on the Democrat side. It'd be a free-for-all over there. They wouldn't be able to stop it. And I know you have some numbers on Newsom where he's at, but bottom line is there won't be just one. So that's their dilemma. They knew they were going to walk it in, but they didn't think they'd see this. And again, we don't want to run World War III based on a presidential election. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Let's do this, Joe. We're up against a break right now. We're going to be back in 60 seconds, and we're going to talk about Newsom and the other Democrats right when we come back.
Banks are supposed to be the safest placeholders for cash in the world, but in 2022 that changed. The Federal Reserve pulled out $2.5 trillion of liquidity out of the banks, and the Fed also changed the requirements so banks don't need to keep any funds on hand. This means banks are starved for liquidity and have now become very dangerous places to hold your assets. Get out of the system with the world's safest and most private assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott, Ph.D. at 720-605-3900. The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most private assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott, Ph.D., 720-605-3900.
All right, Joe, we're back. And I tell you, Kirk Elliott, he makes a really good point there. I mean, you've got to have some gold and silver. So, folks, get a hold of Kirk. Follow up with him on that. It'll be well worth your while because I think gold and silver will be much higher. Joe, let's talk about the alternatives to Biden. You're seeing names thrown out like Gavin Newsom, Governor Whitmer, Cory Booker. I mean, is it realistically? I mean, look, and then other people on the, quote, liberal networks are saying, there's no way you could bypass Kamala Harris. Joe, if Biden steps aside, will the Democrats simply turn to someone even more unpopular than Biden, the esteemed Vice President Kamala Harris, or will Newsom, Whitmer, Pritzker et al. Hop into the race?
Well, I believe a lot of people will, on the Democrat side, will jump in because they think Donald Trump will be in jail and won't be able to run. That's what they're still banking on, hoping for. That's their whole agenda on the left. They've weaponized lawfare against the president, President Trump, and this is what they're thinking. But what Biden needs, I don't think he'll endorse, but what he needs is he needs pardons for himself, possibly for his son, family members, and I think that's what they will look for. I doubt that Biden will endorse. I think he'll leave it up to the race and anyone who wants to join. That way, there he's not locked in. But when Sean Hannity had Newsom on his show a couple times a few months ago, you could see the loyalty between Newsom and Biden. Loyalty is what Newsom was projecting, and I think that was to say, hey, if I was the president, I love this guy. I love his policies. He's done everything great in his whole life, which was completely insane to listen to. But that's what will happen. Newsom will end up being nominated because two things. Polls will show he's likable for women. We'll talk about the California issue, but likable, great looking guy, articulate, knows the numbers. And I've said it before a bunch of times, and that he will be able to raise money. And Nancy Pelosi staying in the game kind of tells us she knew that was coming. So I think he will be the guy, and I think it'll be a natural course of events, but very quickly. You'll go from possibly Thanksgiving until the January 1st to January polls, primaries. So this is a 60-day turnaround potentially for everybody who could raise the money, who could show in the polls. It won't be Kamala. That's my take.
Zero doubt about that. His approval rating in the state of California may be near a low 49%. But, when you just aesthetically stack up Gavin Newsom, say he's on the left-hand screen, and Joe Biden's on the right-hand screen, whether you agree or disagree with Newsom's policies, he's an attractive candidate. He is a two-term governor, and Biden looks like a flailing old man. And, you look at some of these issues. 42% of the people, these are plus 42 numbers, say Biden is too old to run. Joe, that's only going to get worse.
Also, there's the health.
Let me finish giving the policy. His policies hurt Americans, plus 17. The economy is hurting people, plus 24. Look, inflation's come down. We do have record job growth. Give them some credit for that. But it's not resonating with key voters. People in middle-income America, lower-income America, they are suffering because of the inflation, which is still high. And every time they go to the grocery, every time they fill up their gas, it's problematic. And then you take that into effect and you say, okay, let's look at the overall country. Our border is completely out of control, solely to blame on Biden and the Democrats. Crime in these blue cities, out of control. Illegal immigrants sleeping on the street, in hotels, out of control. Foreign policy, Trump leaves office. Now we got a war in Ukraine that's just basically a stalemate, and we got a war in Israel. So, Joe, when you look back, people are saying, hey, I didn't agree with a lot of Trump. I think he's a jerk. He's a liar. He's this, he's that. But the American people had relative peace and prosperity under President Donald Trump. So give me your thoughts off those numbers, Joe.
Right out of the gate, what will happen is Biden will lose if he stayed in the game by people staying home. They're not going to vote for Trump. They're going to be disgusted at the choice, and they're going to stay home. African Americans, I've talked to many of them, they're embarrassed, and they're Democrats to vote for him. They're just embarrassed. The ones that are vocal, I'm not voting for that old man. I'm not voting for that idiot. I'm not voting at all. Because if they won't go for Trump, they're not voting for him. You've got the Israelis and that are Israeli American citizens, many of them, I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands, and they're like, wait a second, this isn't over. This won't be over probably till next summer if it does wrap up in Israel. And so they're going, wait a second. And you know the numbers, Hispanic Americans, and bigger than that in the swing states, in Wisconsin, especially in Detroit, Michigan. Oh my God. You've got all of the, Hamas, you've got Muslims, and they're just irate. They're not going to vote for Trump. They could go to Bobby. They could go to something if they wanted to vote, but they're not voting for Biden. And so they know this already. There's nothing the Democrat brand doesn't know. It's looking for, probably first of all, to try to get Trump locked up. If they get him locked up in jail, in their mind, they can buy the time to do what they have. Their problem is they're between a rock and a hard place with the primaries. Will Trump go to jail before primaries? No. So they're going to be in a problem as they are. I keep seeing Biden Bob.
I mean, it's astounding. Trump only gets stronger the more they attack him. Hey, listen, Joe, we have 4 key elections today. We've got a big governor's race in the state of Kentucky. We've got the Virginia Senate and House. Every seat's up for re-election. There's a belief that Glenn Youngkin could overcome that and possibly turn Virginia red. I know the abortion issues out there and the left-wing liberals and all these women I wouldn't vote for a Republican. But Glenn Youngkin's proposed to 15 weeks, which seems pretty reasonable. That's on the ballot. You've got races in Ohio, and you got a governorship in Mississippi. But the key races tonight to look at are the Kentucky. Kentucky's only had 3 Republican governors in the last 75 years. And Bashir, has done a reasonably good job, as far as I can tell, in the state of Kentucky. But you have a young attorney general, a McConnell protege, Daniel Cameron, and he could pull off the upset tonight in Kentucky. And in Virginia, I've got news for you. If Glenn Youngkin retains the House and takes the Senate, heads will explode in the media with Virginia turning purple. So big night in election results tonight. And we really have to monitor, to make sure these elections are done fairly. And I believe that they will be. I want to ask you this, Joe. Speaker Johnson has come out and said, no uncertain terms, he's going to tie Ukraine aid to border security. And the logic's pretty straightforward. Hey, we're going to send $60 billion to Ukraine while we have 2.6 million illegal aliens come across our border every year. Johnson's smart. He is going to get border security, and Schumer and them can say all they want. It's dead on arrival, it's dead on arrival. Let them squeal. They want it more than the Republicans do. Republicans have all the leverage here. I predict that'll get through. And the brilliant idea to tie the Israeli aid to offsets cutting the IRS. If you're a regular American, you're thinking, well, wait, we should give Israel aid. And yeah, the IRS, they probably have too much money. I think Speaker Johnson is the right guy for the job. He's leading the caucus. He's done a fabulous job coming out of the gate. And I have zero to fault him. I think the man's integrity. He speaks clearly. He does network interviews. They throw the slings and arrows at him. And he just says, hey, listen, I'm not a wealthy guy. I got 2 kids in college, one going to law school. I have a wife. I have 4 kids. He's a normal guy. And I think the American people, the more they get to know Mike Johnson, they're going to say, this guy's got our back. He speaks for us.
Well, it's old-fashioned horse trading is what he's doing. That's what you did in politics. You give this, you tie to that, you give that. And so he's smart. He's doing the right thing. Of course, he'll continue funding the government. It's a loser when we don't. But this is why you do the horse trading and you tie things together. And the border security is important because in the poll of the New York Times I mentioned earlier, which was a few days ago, it was Nevada that was up by 7 or something. Trump was up because
10. Trump was up 10.
Arizona, maybe even New Mexico. It's not on the poll, but so many are coming over, and it's the crime. And even if you're Spanish American or Hispanic, and you're whoa, I can't have this in our our border states. So they need to do something. I think they'll split. The party itself wants to claim border security, but Trump has pushed it so hard that they just can't overcome what he put out there for 7-8 years now. Build a wall. Just don't know how. They want to build it, but they want to own that mantra, that soundbite, and they can't. And so they're just going to hang themselves politically. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's going to be. But again, I think Mike Johnson's holding cards. I really believe that. Schumer can lie and say dead on arrival all he wants, but it's not. All right, we have a debate tomorrow night in Miami. Joe, as best I can tell, we're going to have Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Tim Scott on. It looks like it's going to be 5 on stage. Trump's not going to attend. And it looks like Asa Hutchinson, he's not going to qualify. Doug Burgum, great governor of North Dakota, doesn't look like he's going to qualify. What do you make of the state of the primary right now? I mean, Trump's leading by 25 in Iowa, and in New Hampshire, South Carolina, a lot of states he's leading by 30 or 40.
If I was Trump, I'd show up and sit in the audience. That's what I would do. But don't be surprised if he doesn't do that. Just to sit there and go, oh, my God. But, yeah, I mean, DeSantis, listen, we still love Ron. We get it. He has some political ambitions and he's young. It was just a wrong move. He needed to do what Newsom's doing, sit around, hang around when the party needs him. He didn't do that, so he's hurt himself. Nikki, I mean, you know, like I've said from everywhere, she's, of course, not what the base wants, more of a George H. Bush years ago. Not as likable by the base, but necessary. I keep thinking that she'll be, you know, eventually be VP. I'm sorry. It's the person, whether I like that she's not right wing. I don't think you want right wing. You want a little more centrist and you need a woman. And I think Trump will patch it up with her over time. And she's the one to watch, but not on her own. I don't think she's more than 8, 9, 10, some places 15%, but she's got what the party needs. She actually is the future of the Republican Party, and I hope she doesn't blow it like DeSantis has done.
DeSantis has blown anything, Joe. I mean, he's my governor down here. He's been incredibly successful in the state of Florida. And I'm going to remind a lot of people, okay, a lot of people are saying, oh, he shouldn't have run this time. He shouldn't have run. You know what, folks? A lot of presidents got the experience of running the first time. They lost, and they came back and won. You took the words right out of my mouth. Ronald Reagan actually lost twice.
But with Trump, it's such a weird thing where he's not Reagan with his polish. And so he wouldn't be mad. I don't see him being mad at it. And I've been messaging some people high up around him. I don't think he will be mad. We're all feeling at Nikki for some of the slams she's done at him. But with a man, I don't think he could take it. And that's the problem. That's the matrix thing we got going on with Ron and him. It's a different time. But anyway, that being said, we've got, 60, 70, 80 days before we open primaries up. So this is the holiday season, and look for Biden to bow out. My predictions are either at Thanksgiving or between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Well, let me close it out with this, folks. We got 10 seconds left. I think Biden's going to hang in there, crawl in there, keep his hands around the presidency, but eventually he will step out. Folks, thanks for watching. Thanks for viewing. See you on Thursday. Great show, Joe.